Hey guys, today's bowl that I'm making for my friends is a classic Ginger Shoyu, handmade curly noodles, and 2 types of chashu. So, I welcome you to episode 4 of Ramen for Friends. The soup today for this classic style is going to be a pork and chicken soup with some vegetable aromatics added towards the end. Starting off with the pork bones that take longest to extract, place into a pot, cover with water, bring to a boil, then down to a low simmer, skimming off any scum that rises to the top for around 20 minutes, making sure to stir the pot to bring any scum stuck on the bones afloat. The total cook time for the soup is going to be 10 hours. Then, at the 5th hour, you want to add some chicken carcasses which has been cleaned of its lungs and innards. Doing this ensures that no dark scum will be released and imparted into our soup. Here, you want to hold the soup at around 90 degrees Celsius to extract the chicken flavors. At this point, you also want to add some Seabura or pork back fat, letting it soften for around 4 hours. After 1.5 hours, you want to skim off the pork and chicken fat that has been rendered, straining and saving this for your aroma oil as well as your smoked chashu. Then, for the Niibuta chashu, add in the pork shoulder to slowly cook in the soup. For my chunk size, it took around 1.5 hours for a tender yet meaty texture. Then, steeping it in our Shoyu Tare after tender, which is going to be composed of a 2:1 ratio of maru daizu to koikuchi shoyu and a few dashes of fish sauce, combining with 15% meating with its alcohol evaporated. Then, adding some smashed up katakuchi iwashi and a piece of kombu, holding this at 70 degrees Celsius for 1 hour. Jumping back to the soup, at the 9th hour, the seabura should have softened, so remove from the soup by transferring into a bowl and mash using a whisk, keeping warm for later. Finally, for the last hour, we have our veg and aromatics. These include 2 leaves of napa cabbage, a bit of carrot, a few cloves of garlic, a knob of ginger, and half an onion. These will serve as a clean accent to the pork and chicken umami. You want to steep these for the final 1 hour and serve the soup fresh directly afterwards for peak aroma. The noodles we're making today are some mid-hydration chiji ramen, but not everything went as planned. You'll see. Anyway, the specs are 1.2% sodium carbonate, 1% salt, 3% whole egg, and 36% hydration. Whisk the salt in one by one gradually to dissolve, then the egg, and finally place in the fridge to cool. While the kansui cools, measure out our high protein flour and add it to a large mixing bowl. If you're hand mixing like me, make sure to incorporate the kansui slowly, mixing until fully incorporated before adding the next round. The cold kansui slows down its rate of absorption by the flour, which will help you out with achieving a more even mix. Once all the kansui has been incorporated, you want to continue mixing for at least 15 minutes until the surface of the soburo feels smooth and just ever so slightly dry, which looks like this. Then, transfer the soburo into a Ziploc bag and step it into an evenly thinned out sheet, making sure to give both sides a good stepping and give it a 1 hour rest to relax the gluten. After the rest, cut open the bag and release the dough sheet onto a cutting board. Then, using a knife to split the dough sheets lengthwise, taking one of the halves and lightly thin out using a rolling pin so that less pressure is placed on the rollers. Carefully roll this through setting 0 of the Mercato and down to setting 3 without skipping any dials. Repeating the same for the other half. For the first lamination, stack the 2 rolled out sheets on top of each other and press down to combine. Then, roll through setting 0, down to setting 3 and fold once again to laminate. Repeating this process until you reach your desired texture. Speaking of desired texture, I forgot that the UK was quite dry, and not accounting for the low humidity was today's blunder. So, the resulting poor gluten structure and surface texture led to noodles that were quite brittle and mushy. One way to solve this and add humidity is to keep some water boiling in the background, which helps a lot, especially if you're a beginner and is working quite slowly. Anyway, I did a total of 4 laminations. Then, rolling the sheets up onto a rolling pin and letting it rest for 30 minutes to relax the gluten. After the 30 minutes, I rolled the sheet to setting 5 on the marcato and cut using the tagliolini cutter for some mildly reverse cut noodles. I went for a length of around 30 centimeters and dust with rice flour after cutting. Finally, I gave these a nice temomi for some curl to create what the Japanese call ちぢれ麺. These can either be served fresh on the day or aged in room temperature overnight for a glossier slurp. For the roasted and smoked pork belly, you want to salt the belly and leave it in the fridge uncovered overnight. Then, place it into a 130°C oven to slowly roast until it reaches an internal temperature of around 58 degrees. Return this to a 250-degree oven with a generous amount of lard added on top, as what we're trying to do is to smoke the belly in its own fat. Once smoke starts circulating in the oven, turn off and leave the pork to smoke for 10 to 15 minutes. This leaves you with a smoky roasted chashu that will sit beautifully in our bowl. First, we have the spinach, which we are going to blanch in heavily salted water, then chopped in cold water and finally cut into segments, making sure to allocate both stem and leaves to each bundle. Of course, we also have the grated ginger, which will go on as both a topping as well as inside our bowl. Then we have the naruto for that chuukasoba flair. The nori I'm using today is Yamato Kita Ju-ichi from Numata Nori, which carries an earthy nori aroma that pairs really well with the shoyu. We also have Negi Whites, where the cores are separated and the outermost layer is removed and can go into the soup, cutting the inner layers into squares for toppings, and finally dice the cores to go into the bottom of our bowl for aroma. Finally, slice both the Niibuta shoulder and the roasted pork belly with a bit of thickness for a juicier bite. And with that, everything is ready. So, let's put a bowl together, shall we?
Hi Haley, how's the ramen today?
It was really good. The soup was soy sauce and the ginger was kind of spicy and cut through the mild soup really well.
Yeah.
The noodles were really, they're thin noodles and they were really slurpy and silky, which I really liked.
Yeah, right.
The pork was also very smoky and it was pork belly, so it was a bit fat as well, but it was the perfect balance overall.
I love to hear that. Come again next time, yeah?
Yeah, definitely.